So now, our final speaker for this afternoon is Annie McKEE. Annie is the Program Director and Senior Fellow Chief Learning Officer for Medical Education Programs at the Graduate School of Education for the University of Pennsylvania. Annie is a best-selling author whose work has been translated into 25 languages. Her newest book, How to Be Happy at Work, The Power of Purpose, Hope, and Friendship. We're looking forward to her presentation today. Annie has her doctorate in organizational behavior from Case Western Reserve University, her baccalaureate degree, graduated summa cum laude from the Chaminade, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, University of Honolulu. Annie contributes to her field and the community through pro bono work, including co-designing, conducting the Police Executive Leadership Institute with the Major Cities Chiefs Association and the Holocaust Memorial Museum. She also serves on the Consortium for the Advancement of Learning and Development, which is a think tank sponsored by McKinsey and the Marshall Goldsmith Top 100 Coaches. So with that, we'd like to present Annie. Thank you.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Hi, everybody. What a morning, right? So inspiring, so inspiring. I don't always have the luxury of being in an event like this the entire time, and I'm just so grateful to have been invited and to have had the time. In fact, if you look at your program, if you open it up, the first page under the title page, it starts out with deep gratitude. And that's kind of how I feel about what I've heard this morning and the snippets of conversation around the room, as well as our speakers and the stories people have told. Just so inspiring. So in the next hour or so, I want to give you an opportunity to think about your story, to think about who you are. Yes, we will talk about how to be happy at work, but it's really about who are you and what do you bring to this thing called work? What do you bring to your life? What do you bring to the women and the men in your life who count on you? So I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk with each other a little bit. I'll share some of what I've learned along the way, and hopefully we'll end the morning on a real high. Does that sound like a good way to spend the last hour before lunch? Yes? Okay, good. So, Jocelyn, thank you for that introduction. You know, I know you've all had this experience when somebody introduces you think, wow, did I do that? Really? Is that me? And you think, well, I guess it is. But like most of you, you know, we're not born and then all of a sudden we're teaching in some great place or we've got some great job. There's a path, and those paths are not always, and I would say usually, not easy, and mine wasn't either. I was born into a family that basically was very poor. My mom was a single mom for most of the time we were growing up, and it was tough. It was also loving, and it was powerful, and it was strong. There were good values, and there were a couple of women in there who really made a difference. My mom, for one, and my two grandmothers, awesome human beings who would look and say, oh, yes, you can do it, Annie, yes, you can. Fast forward to adulthood, lots of highs, lots of lows. I find my own self a single mom. And luckily, I had the learning that I had gotten so long ago from my grandmothers and my mother. And as my daughter Rebecca puts it, we come from a long line of bad pussycats. and that got me through and got me later in life to education and then onward. So I found myself at 35, all of a sudden, you know, catapulted into the business world. I hadn't been in the business world. I'd been sort of in a poor community, organizing soup kitchens because we needed them, right? But, you know, here I was in the business world, consulting and doing all this fancy stuff, and I was in a man's profession. I was studying leadership. I was consulting on leadership. I was, you know, this is back in the, you know, early 90s, really. I was one of the very few women doing that work. I still am one of the very few women doing that work. And yet I persevered because I really cared about it. I thought, we've got to figure out how we can influence, how we can work together in our organizations to get things done. whether those organizations be schools or hospitals or not-for-profits or non-governmental or businesses. We spend a lot of time at work, and we've got to figure out how to do it better. So off I went on my journey of trying to figure it out. And what I wanted to do today to start is to talk about a little about what we've discovered about what it takes to actually lead, whether you've got the capital L leadership role or the small L leadership role. We all influence. And then I'm going to move a little bit more into what more we can do to be truly, authentically fulfilled in the workplace. So let me just start with a couple of things. All right, let's see if this thing will go on. There we go. All right. So one of the things that we say, when it comes right down to it, this thing called leadership is very practical. Great leaders, whether they be formal or informal, they move us. They make us want to get up off the couch and do things we might not otherwise do. They move us. They touch our hearts. They touch our minds. They make us want to act. It's really very simple, and yet it's not. And it's not because there are far too few leaders in our organizations, even though every one of us has the capacity to be at our best every single day. I actually truly believe, I'm an optimist, I'm an idealist, I actually like those things about myself. I truly believe that every single person in this room, every one of you and me too, we all have the capacity to be truly great in our workplaces, but we don't always get there. One of the things I'd like you to do to start today is to reflect for a minute, and I'm going to ask you to talk to one other person at your table, not your whole table, okay? Pick one other person, turn around if all the partners are chosen, and grab somebody from another table. And each of you in turn, for just 2 minutes, so a total of 4 minutes, really short, talk about a time in the recent past when you were at your very best in the workplace. You touched somebody, you moved somebody, you got that really difficult employee on the right track, you got the team going, you accomplished something. Let go of humility for just a second. You can pick it up again in a minute. Talk about what you thought, what you did. What was it about you that made that situation great? So you're going to go 2 minutes, 2 minutes. I'll call time at the end. Pick one person at your table. At my best. Go for it. Okay, everybody, I'm going to call you back if I could. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you. Thank you. So check in with yourself just really quickly right now. You don't have to say anything, but just check in with yourself. How do you feel? Just ask yourself that question and just become aware of how you feel. If you're like most people, you probably feel a little bit good about not only telling your story, right? That story that you probably didn't trumpet to the world, but you feel good about listening to a story too, yeah? Hearing what your friend, your partner, your table mate was talking about. One of the things that we know about learning and growth and development is that when we feel good, and I really mean emotionally, when we feel good, when we feel enthusiastic, hopeful, charged up, we learn better, faster, more, right? So while most of us spend most of our time focusing on our deficiencies and what's wrong with us and trying to get better at something, all good, we need to do those things. If you want to develop your leadership, if you want to develop yourself, if you want to grow quickly, claim your strengths. Claim those wonderful talents that you actually have. Claim them to yourself and talk about them with other people. Find a way. You're not going to turn into a braggart. We are so far away, we women, from becoming braggarts, right? We hide that stuff under a bushel so well, there's not one little bit of light getting out, you know? Find a way to claim it. Not only will you be showing yourself to others who might want to know and could learn from you, or maybe could help you, sponsor you, mentor you, etc. You will also be feeding yourself, fueling yourself with that positive energy that will allow you to leverage those strengths and maybe to face up to a couple of those things that, yeah, you really do need to work on, right? So that's tip number one, right? Focus on claiming your talents and strengths and show them to yourself and show them to others. Now, if we all did that, we'd have way better workplaces, I'm sure of it. And I said it a minute ago, unfortunately, most organizations are not particularly great places to work. That is a tragedy as far as I'm concerned. I don't know about you, 8 hours a day is a short day at work, right? We spend a lot of time working. We should not be miserable 8 or 9 or 10 hours a day, week after week, year after year, until we're X number of years old. Not okay. And I've been asking the question, why is that? Like, why is that? If we've got the strengths, if we all kind of want a good workplace, a good work environment, what's going wrong? Well, one of the things that's going wrong is that the way we think about work, it's outdated, you know? It's really old school. I'm not sure if it was ever okay to look at work as a strict hierarchy with some people have lots more power than others, and, you know, some of us should keep our lip zipped and the rest of us can talk. I don't know if that was ever okay, but it surely isn't okay now. It's not working for our organizations, and it's not working for us. And there are some myths that we've internalized that we actually have come to believe that are so deeply embedded that we kind of don't question them. And, you know, a couple of them that I want to talk about, I'll just talk about 2 of them that are really kind of interesting because we know they're not true, and yet we still believe them. The first one is that being smart is the key to all good things at work, right? Being smart is enough. IQ, intellect, that's enough, right? That'll get you where you need to go as a leader, as an employee. It'll get you, you know, moving up in your career. Well, here's the thing. In today's world, you've got to be smart. Like, the world's changing really fast. We got to be quick. We got to be reading. We got to be learning. We got to be changing. It's not that we get our career and then just sort of quietly move through it anymore, if it was ever like that, but sure not like that now. Being smart is your entry ticket. That gets you in the door. It keeps you there. It keeps you moving forward. But what we know for sure, beyond a shadow of a doubt from the research that I and a lot of my colleagues have done, as well as, you know, non-academic work in companies, in institutions, in organizations like yours with real people, is what makes a difference when it comes to leading, influencing, collaborating, working well with one another, is this thing called emotional intelligence. I heard it mentioned earlier. I think you've been exposed to it a little bit. Most people have. What this means, if we are able to focus on ourselves, be self-aware, manage ourselves, understand how to manage stress, manage our achievement drive, stay positive when things are tough, empathize, read people, read the organization, inspire others, that's what makes the difference. And yet, who gets promoted? That smart individual contributor, not the great team member. We got to stop that. And to the extent that we have the power to make that change, we should take it, whether it's through promoting people for the right reasons, hiring people for the right reasons, or appreciating people for the right reasons. You're smart, and boy, oh boy, are you helping us pull this team together. That is making a difference around here. Thank you. That makes a difference. So why is this? You know, we're lucky in my field because we get to draw on all kinds of fields, business, psychology, you know, all sorts of things. One of the things we look at is neuroscience. And as it turns out, there's a lot of research coming out of the neuroscience field now on the interaction between feeling, emotion, and cognition and thinking, right? And action, of course. And to greatly oversimplify it, and I hope there are no neurologists in the room, and if there are, I apologize. We feel before we think, nanoseconds, mind you, but we have emotional reactions that are very powerful and often below the level of consciousness that drive how we think about situations or whatever happens to be going on. The combination of those two things, our feelings, complicated, our thoughts, complicated, drive our actions. And this often happens so fast, literally nanoseconds, that we are almost on autopilot. Gotta slow it down. Slow it down. Understand what's going on inside us, inside others. And then we can make those choices about how to think about a situation. Get away from that old habitual way of looking at it. Think about it differently. Take a different action. That's what helps us be more successful, frankly, in our workplaces. The other myth, and this is really particularly important, I think, for women, is that, leave that stuff at home. Feelings do not belong. Personal life, keep it out of the workplace. Work is work and home is home, and never the twain shall meet. Now, there are boundaries. There are boundaries. There's a grain of truth there, right? You're not going to bring everything about you to the workplace most of the time. It's hot outside. You're probably not going to show up at work in your bathing suit, right? You don't. You feel like taking a nap at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you're probably not going to lie down on the floor, or turn YouTube on or whatever. Yes, we do have boundaries, but the reality is we are emotional beings as much as we are intellectual beings, and that comes with us to work. And I think it was Lorena who said earlier that emotions are quite literally contagious, right? That is true. That is actually true. Emotions, feelings spread like wildfire between and among people. And the reason that's important is because when we are, remember this, when we are largely positive, enthusiastic, hopeful, compassionate, all those good things, largely, not all the time, but largely, we learn better, we think faster, we're more innovative, we can adopt new perspectives, we think better. When, however, we're trapped by fear and cynicism and anger and chronic stress that's often at an acute level, it's like putting blinders on that old brain of ours. We shut down. We shut down. So, if you happen to be in a position of leadership, formal or informal, this is particularly important because your emotional state impacts others' emotional state to a very large degree. We've all had the experience of, sitting at our desk or walking into the office and seeing the boss walking in like this, slamming papers down. What happens to us? We go, better hide out. I wonder what I did. Stay away from him, right? She's dangerous today. We now are not going to have a good day. We now are not thinking clearly, not just that boss. We got to watch out for this stuff. And if we're going to create workplaces that are not only humane and, ripe with all that hope and enthusiasm that we really do enjoy and that help us get work done, but if we're going to create workplaces where we can each fulfill our own purpose, which is really important, we've got to pay attention to the emotional reality that we are helping to create. And it's really easy to blame, to kind of point outward and say, well, it's him, that horrible boss, and by the way, they exist. I worked for one once. Heck, I was toxic, he hated me. They exist. But at some point, we've got to take responsibility ourselves. We do have the power. I don't know if Lorena's still here, but good job, right? It's also take back the power, take it back, and do what we can. So this thing called emotional intelligence, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship management, that's what makes the difference. And oh, by the way, we can get better at it. We can learn it. And it starts with cataloging what we do, watching how we interact with people, watching how we feel, taking stock of how our emotions impact others, impact ourselves. What are my triggers? What are his triggers? What gets her going? What gets them excited? Knowing those things allows us to tap into our best and their best. So, in the social sciences, I guess that's what you could say I do, we don't often say, hey, there's a formula to explain things. That's for, medicine and hard science and that sort of thing. But we've actually been able to say with a lot of certainty, really, that your emotional intelligence contributes to the creation of a culture, a climate that can do one of two things: foster positive productivity, foster success, or the otherwise. And we have a lot of choices about how we do that, which direction we go. And they're not the great big choices about, if you're running an organization, we're going to do a culture change, or we're going to have a whole new management development program. Fine, do those things. It's the everyday little actions that we take. The thank yous, the smiles, the good jobs, the hey, that was a tough day. Why don't we just sit down and talk it through? I'm sorry we got into that conflict. Let's talk about how we're going to move forward. It's those actions that create the kind of workplace that we all want and need. So, I don't know. It really comes down to taking responsibility for this and taking responsibility for our own learning. You have what it takes to be successful and fulfilled at work. Probably in the job you're in now, and I'll come to why that's true in a minute. Even if it's not the perfect job for you, you have what it takes. And yes, the environment around you is going to impact the degree to which you can be truly fulfilled and successful, true. But you have a lot more responsibility. I tell myself this too. I have a lot more responsibility oftentimes than I think I do. We've been kind of trained to, put it on somebody else, or it's the company, or it's the institution, or it's just the culture around here. No, we got to take responsibility ourselves and then learn and grow and do and be what we can be. Single most important thing you can do to be better at leading, capital L, small l, whatever you do, influencing, collaborating, working well together, touching your clients, making sure your services are accessible, is to develop your own emotional intelligence. We've known this for a while. All those myths, they get in the way, but we know this, and you've probably heard a lot of it before. So I've been asking myself the question, what is it that we really should focus on if we want to make a difference? And there are all these models out there in the academic world, and every organization I've ever seen has some kind of competency model or something that says you develop these and you're going to get better at your job, right? I think it boils down to a few very simple things. Self-awareness, spend time, reflect, think, once a day, once a week. Think about what you did and don't dwell on everything you did wrong. Think about what you did right, too. Don't beat yourself up all the time. Make sure you understand that interaction of your emotions and your thoughts and your actions. Empathy. Practice reading people, and especially practice reading people who are different from yourself. It's hard. Don't make assumptions. Practice, ask, be curious. And then, of course, self-management. Managing ourselves when times get tough, and especially when stress is high. Stress is an epidemic in our organizations these days. It's an epidemic in our world, and we've got to get a hold of it. So here I am a few years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago, thinking, okay, Annie, you've been doing this for a while. You're out talking to all these leaders and having a lot of fun, and we're moving the needle a little bit. In some of these companies, we are moving the needle. They're getting a little bit better. Just a little bit better. I'm kind of an impatient person, I guess that's what happens when you're raised by bad pussycats, You want it to get better now. So I'm thinking, yeah, man. Okay, so we've made some progress, not enough. What is going on, right? I never thought we had all the answers, don't get me wrong, but it just felt like we were missing something, And as it happened, I'd been doing a lot of consulting worldwide, still am, but at the time, for a period of about 5 or 6 years, we had done a lot of studies in a lot of different kinds of organizations in various countries, like South Africa, Germany, US, Cambodia, both businesses, government organizations, and not-for-profit, so a real mix, right? And we'd been looking at leadership practices and emotional intelligence and culture and all that. And I thought, well, why don't I go back and just reread all these interviews, thousands of them. I'm not going to reread them all, but I'm going to look at a lot of them and look at those reports again and sort of get out of my own box and ask the question, what have we missed? What have we missed? And I honestly thought that I'd find something to do with, well, I really thought I'd find some nuance in emotional intelligence, some nuance around organizational culture. I really thought I'd find that. And surprisingly, that is not what I found. What I found was that we hadn't been looking for this, so we didn't really see it. People were literally screaming out in these interviews, I want to love my job. I started in this company or this institution because I care about the mission. I want to be passionate about what I do. Sometimes I am, too often I'm not, or most of the time I'm not. And I'm not very happy. Well, back to that neuroscience, you're not very happy, you're not going to do a very good job. So I started really digging into it, and it's like, wow, if this is what our research is showing, well, what do other people say? And my eyes were open, and I was kind of familiar with this, but boy, when I looked at it all in one place and found that truly there is a relationship between happiness and engagement and success at work, fulfillment in life, wow, it's clear as day. And what's even more interesting is that a lot of what we know is that happiness comes before success. Now that's weird, right? Usually we're saying, well, I'll be happy when I get that promotion, I get that new job, I get out of this company, or I get that new house, or my kids are finished with school, whatever it is. I'll be happy when. We've got to find it now. So what I started to look at is what is it and what gets in our way? What is happiness at work? What is it really? I looked at my own life, and I've had periods of my employment life that were really good. I happen to be in a pretty good one now, which makes me happy, and I feel really good about that. But I've had times that were really bad, like really bad. You probably have too. We all have. So I looked at my own experience, looked at all this research that others have done and that we did, and asked the question, what does it take? And what I discovered, and I'll talk about this in kind of reverse order, what I discovered is that there are really three elements of happiness at work. One is a sense of purpose, meaningfulness. My work matters to me. It's about something bigger than just me, just my career. A sense of hope. We're going somewhere. I'm going somewhere. The future's going to be better than today because of what I'm doing, because of what we're doing, and friendships. First, though, I decided to look at what gets in our way. And that's when I really discovered some things we can do something about. I call them happiness traps. These aren't the bad boss that you can't control, that employee who's really annoying, or the stress and pressure that you think you can't do anything about, right? We're not talking about that. These are traps that we get into by ourselves. I'm going to talk about a few of them quickly and then spend a little bit more time on one of them that I think is particularly relevant for women. So, you've heard, I think, quite a lot today, and Raquel, you talked about this some. The shoulds in life. I should do this, I should do that. Well, yeah, every society has shoulds, There are things that we expect of one another in certain circumstances. When I go into the drugstore to buy my toothpaste, I do not expect the pharmacist to tell me about his divorce. I don't. It could happen, and I'd probably be gracious, but there are some social rules that we abide by. Problem is that for too many of us, shoulds come to rule our lives. Rule our lives. I thought you were particularly eloquent, Raquel, in talking about, I should be the best mom, I should be the best worker, I gotta look my best, I gotta do this, For women, wow, this can be a heavy, heavy burden. And it does not result in fulfillment and happiness at work. It results in burnout, breakdown, health crises, problems in relationships, and just the opposite of success at work. So getting a hold of what shoulds am I choosing to have in my life? What shoulds are kind of non-negotiables? You know, like the bathing suit at work, nah, you're not going to do that, right? And what shoulds am I just doing or following or believing in because I always have, even though they're hurting me? That's important. Ambition. This is interesting. Ambition's a good thing, right? Yeah, ambition is a good thing until it's not. Ambition is great until it rules your life. Ambition is really good as long as it drives us to kind of reach for the stars, like reach to be our very best, reach for a noble purpose. But sometimes what happens, and this is the trap, the goal becomes everything. The journey is nothing. And we go for goal after goal after goal. It starts in high school, maybe even middle school and elementary school. Get that A, get on the soccer team, become the captain, get into a good college, take the good job, even though you don't want to work there. Get promoted, even though you want to work in a different division. We follow the goals. And I've met these people, I've coached these people 20 years in, 25 years into their careers, and they're like, what have I been doing? I never really wanted to do this anyway. Now I'm really stuck. If you find yourself making the achievement of goals the end-all and be-all of your life, sooner or later it starts to feel a little bit empty. Something to watch out for. That's not ambition anymore. That's a trap. That's a trap. Money. I started out by saying we were really poor as kids. I was really poor as an adult too, and I mean really poor. I won't ask for a show of hands, but I know some of you in this room have been too. All of us have struggled with money. Everybody needs it. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not the point. But when it becomes the reason you do everything, and I've seen it, I've seen people stay in jobs they hate saying they needed the money when they've got literally millions in the bank. I've seen it, right? I have seen it. And I won't dwell on this one too much, but the reality is money should follow good work, not the other way around. And finally, again, this one's pretty important for women, a sense of helplessness. We are schooled in many societies around the world as women to feel powerless. Powerless to change our circumstances, to protect ourselves, to stand up for ourselves, to insist on being treated with respect. That is dangerous. And if in my lifetime I could see one thing for my daughters and all the young women that I mentor and care about so much, it would be to see this really start to crumble. And I actually am. I remember Rebecca, one of my daughters, came to me when she was about 27, 28, and she's a jewelry designer. That is a vicious field, in case you want to know, and it's run largely by men. There are very few women in it. She loves it, though. She's really talented, and she's really good. And, she came to me after the umpteenth time. She's a beautiful woman, very smart, emotionally intelligent. The umpteenth time of being harassed at work. And she looked at me and she said, "Mom, I thought you and your friends took care of this already." I said, "Rebecca, I'm sorry. Here's the torch." What's encouraging to me about that interaction is she wasn't sitting around taking it, right? She's not, and we're not. And this helplessness, I don't mean just about how we're treated with respect to sexual harassment, sexual violence, that sort of thing. I mean how we're treated in general. I loved it when Lorena said, "Thank you for agreeing with what I just said. Take back your power. Take it back." So the last trap that I want to talk about, these are important, by the way. Don't minimize these, okay? Look at yourself. Remember, self-awareness, it's everything. Look at yourself. If you think you're a little bit heading down one of these paths, call a halt. Call a halt. Examine. Choose. Be strong. Be courageous. Take the risk to make a change. This one, overwork. This one, overwork. Well, first of all, it's exactly what it sounds like, overwork. Too much work, right? I said earlier that stress is epidemic in our workplaces. It's epidemic in our lives. There is no question about that. The stats bear it out in, studies in psychology and mental health crises and all these sorts of things. We are a stressed out society, and not just here, by the way, most parts of the world. Even parts of the world that you think, oh, they have a much more relaxed lifestyle than we do, not so much anymore. And I look back over, let's say, the last 10 years or so, maybe even a little bit more. So the early 2000s, some of you were just starting in your working lives then, some of you may not have even started then, but the early 2000s was like a revved up period of time. Everybody's moving quick. Technology's taking off, and economies were doing pretty well, and we didn't know there was this rot underneath, but everything's we're moving fast, right? And we're working really hard to keep up, and it felt kind of good. Boom, comes this massive recession that touched every type of organization. It didn't matter what kind. So people are laid off. The ones who are lucky enough to still have a job are now doing 3 people's jobs instead of 1 person's job. And over time, things start getting better. Did they hire those other 2 people back? No, right? Other things came about and people started working again. True, some did, not everybody. But the reality is things didn't get easier as things improved in the economy. They got harder. So we've got, on a societal level, we've got an issue. What are we collectively going to do about this? What are we going to do about the fact that the pressures and the sheer amount of work that needs to be done in this time of huge change in the world is actually causing some of us to get sick? What are we going to do about that? That's a big issue, right? Societal issue. There's another thing that we have a little bit more control over, and that's how we decide to engage with this thing called work. And I want to get my phone for this, because here's what happens to me. This is my phone, right? Here's what happens to me, and I am so guilty of this. Oh, and by the way, the people who are most susceptible to this are people who love their work and feel that they're doing something important. Oh, and boy, that's seductive. It's really seductive, right? Most susceptible. So here's me. It's a Thursday night. I have not cleared my inbox, but I've done a decent job of getting the major fires put out, and I've talked to who I needed to talk to, and it's Thursday night, it's almost Friday. I'm trying to plan so I don't have to work over the weekend. I come home and I'm thinking I'm going to talk to Eddie. Sarah's going to stop by with our grandson Benji. We're just going to have kind of an early evening, whatever. And I put my phone on the kitchen table and I turn it over, and I'm not going to look at that thing. Nope, not going to look at it. And then the darn thing starts moving across the table by itself. It does. Flips itself over and I'm gone, right? I am gone. I think Ariana Huffington calls these things the serpent in civilization's Garden of Eden, right? We can't fix this overwork crisis and the stress crisis at the societal level, but we can fix it a little bit at the personal level, and it takes so much self-control and so much courage. And for women, it also takes kind of a sea change in our tendency to say yes to everything. Why do we say yes to everything? Because, boy, we can get so much more done than, I love the men in my life, but then all of those men in my life, right? That we can take one more thing on. Sure we can, until we can't. So it's self-management, it's courage, and it's learning to say no in ways that are not going to have us self-destruct. So what I would like you to do now, just another short little conversation with the same person at your table, I would like you to talk about what you do to manage the tendency to overwork. What do you do? Your goal is to share at least one strategy that that other person doesn't use. Go for it. All right, everybody, I'm going to call you back again. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So let me try to put it this way. The obstacles to creating the kind of workplace that will ensure your happiness and your success are really big. There are myths, outdated ways of looking at work that keep us focused on the wrong things. There are habits that we've picked up along the way that no longer work for us. And there are pressures that drive us to make choices that end up in stress at a minimum, difficulties at home sometimes as a result of that, and even burnout, right? Let me put it this way. If we each don't take responsibility for trying to shift that just a little bit, it will not change. But if we each decided to make small changes, then it will change, not only for us, but for others. There are so many small things you can do. Commit to not sending any emails on a Sunday. You've just made your life better and everybody who would have seen them. Right? Park the car farther from the building and walk, right? You don't have to take 2 hours out of your day to make these changes. Don't put the phone on the bedside table, you know? And it's not okay if you do that and just put it on vibrate. It's not okay. Little actions, just as it's little actions that make a difference in the kind of environment we create for ourselves and others, little actions are the ones that will make a difference in how we can face up to the pressures and the stress in our workplaces. We've got to fix this. We really do. Another thing that we can do is to focus more explicitly on what I've discovered are elements of happiness at work, purpose and meaning in our workplace, living our values. Many of you work for organizations that are mission-driven and are doing really good work. You're so lucky because purpose is right there. It's right there. You can see it. You can feel it. It is visible. But my experience in working in the nonprofit world myself, and not as a consultant, but in it, sometimes we lose sight of that, right? Don't lose sight of it. Raise it up and make sure you're making the explicit linkages between your values, others' values in your organizations, and what you're doing collectively, talking about it. That makes work feel like a calling, not just a job. Sometimes we have to have just a job. I need a paycheck. I've been there. You know, I was cleaning houses for a while. Got to do this job because I need money to feed my kids. Fine. There's still a way to find meaning there. There's still a way to find meaning there. Quick story, a friend of mine, sad story actually, a friend of mine's son was diagnosed with cancer when he was quite young, about 6. For a number of years after that, they spent a lot of time in Children's Hospital. Do you know who the most important person in that child's world was? Was it the oncologist team? Probably pretty important, but no. The nurses, they were really important, but they changed all the time. It was the janitor who came at 11 o'clock every night and talked to that kid, right? And he knew it. That guy knew how important he was. It doesn't matter what job we're having. I'm not saying you should stay in a job where the working conditions are horrible or you're mistreated. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we human beings are meaning-making creatures and we can find a way. And when we feel that sense of purpose and we're living our values and we're having impact, it gives us the courage to face up to some of the tough stuff, the rotten stuff that we find in our jobs. Hope. Hope. We're all doing what we are doing at work because we're hopeful human beings. We're trying to make the world a better place. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And more power to us for daring to do that in the face of sometimes really big odds. But again, you got to make it explicit. You got to talk about it. You got to fuel yourself with it and others too. And another thing that's often missed, it's really important to periodically say, where is my future in this picture? Where is my family's future? Extend it out. Where's my community's future in this picture of what we're doing at work? We got to make it personal. That's what really makes us feel excited and strong and resilient and able to keep going. And then we gotta empower ourselves. Okay, you got this vision, you gotta go do something about it. Make some plans. Do something about it. Your own vision, your organization's vision, your team. And it doesn't have to be 25 years from now, hunger will be eradicated, women will be making 100%? Okay, I'd settle for 90. Right? It doesn't. Those are good visions, but it can be the smaller ones too. This year, our team's going to have more fun. Right? This year, I'm going to say no to a couple of projects. Right? That matters too. And then finally, friendships at work. Friendship at work is associated with another taboo, another myth. You can't be friends with the people you work with. That's garbage. If I weren't in public, I'd say it much more rudely. That's garbage. Of course we're friends with the people we work with. And what do I mean by that? Do we have to go on vacation or out to dinner or even out to drinks? No. You can, but do you have to? No. What we do need are warm, trusting, respectful relationships with people who, odds are really different from ourselves. Relationships that make us want to, laugh sometimes, and where we can have a fight and come out of it and be better. Friendships, companionate love, right? Love's a funny word. It's a funny word to use when we're talking about work, but it's really important to human beings to feel cared for as one feels cared for in a friendship, to feel that we belong. And this is really big because many of us don't feel like we belong at work. Many of us don't. And when we feel that way, it's kind of empty, right? Where does it start? We've got to start by making others feel as if they belong. And then lo and behold, we do too. That's where it starts. Creating an environment where we explicitly focus on purpose and meaning, where we dream and talk about it and then make it real, and where we ensure that we and others feel like they belong here, they're appreciated, and that we're loved. Thank you very much. Thank you.